So welcome to Prerona Television Canada on behalf of Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and Coaching in collaboration with Prerona TV. We are very happy that we're continuing our 47th episode leadership speaker series. And today our topic is leadership and human psychology. As usual, our regular speaker, Advocate Ziaur Rahman, CEO IITM and adjunct faculty of Independent University is here with us. So we are very happy that he will be continuing your session. Thank you very much, Advocate Ziaur Rahman. You can continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Edward Pobe Mondal in Canada, and I am presenting from Dhaka. So let me open my presentation slides first. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So good evening in Canada and good morning in Dhaka and rest of the world. We have been doing this session for the past 47th presentation series. This is our 48th series. So today's topic is leadership and human psychology. These are interesting ideas that as a human being, we have to consider the human attributes in order to actually lead in society. You have to be able to understand what type of human psychology, human needs assessments you have to carry on in order to succeed as a professional in the marketplace. So this session is going to be talking about how to develop your leadership, understanding the human psychology of others, and how to develop your leadership based on your own psychological profile. So moving forward, okay, I start off with quotations normally, and the first quotation is by Erik Erikson. It says, life doesn't make any sense without interdependence. We need each other, and the sooner we learn that, the better for us all. So here, this person is talking about the interdependence of life. And we all know that we live in a society where we are dependent on each other. And if we are not depending on each other, then we are not going to be putting our best output out. So as a professional, you have to realize that it's never you and you who's directing the opportunity set for the enterprise. So even if you are putting in a lot of effort yourself, you have to realize that it is not just you, but a team effort that actually builds the organization and builds the output that you are driving towards. So moving from I mentality, as a leader, we have to move into we mentality, where we are participating in the process of changing things around. But you are also building your output, you're building your enterprise based on the interdependence, interconnectedness between the people. So you are doing a certain part and another person is doing another part. With your input and their input, ultimately things are moving in the direction where you wanted it to move. So this is an interesting philosophy in life, that interdependence is how we move into an enterprise. Interdependence is how we move towards the attainment of certain output for an enterprise. So moving forward, this is by Ed Danier. He says, probably the biggest insight is that happiness is not just a place, but also a process. Happiness is an ongoing process of fresh challenges, and it takes the right attitudes and activities to continue to be happy. So here we are talking about the issue of happiness not being something as a static issue. Happiness has to be considered as an input that builds a process. So at every point of your life as a professional, you have to be feeling the spirit of happiness. You have to be imbued with the spirit of happiness. Otherwise, you're not going to be building up the fabric, building up this organization in its right earnest. Things will not work as appropriately as you had designed. If you don't blend in happiness with your activities, uh, things will not go as nicely as you had planned for. In other words, it's a contagious kind of thing. Your happiness sets the tone within the enterprise. So it's like an interconnectedness that has to go through within the enterprise. You are happy, you transform the happiness to others. So seeing you, somebody else feels confident, somebody else feels jovial, excited to work with you. And that spirit goes to the next person and next person. So this becomes a happiness factor that travels through the enterprise. So any organization where you cannot spread happiness, that enterprise is not going to be a successful enterprise in the right term success. And when we talk about success, we are not just talking about material success. We are also talking about success in terms of feeling happy and content at the work that you're doing. So if you consider yourself in an enterprise where you're just doing your job and you're not at all concerned about how people are feeling or how you are feeling, you're just having a very wry face, grim face, and you're just doing your work, and you're not being, showing any signs of excitement and happiness. And if you continue to do your work, this will create an uneasy situation within the enterprise. People might think that, is there something wrong with you? Is there something wrong with your human relationship with the other person? So that's where the issue of human psychology automatically comes in. So this session, we are looking at the human psychology from that perspective. So in order to build the psychological framework of an enterprise, the issue of happiness becomes an issue as well. So that's why the right attitude is needed through spreading happiness. And the activities in the enterprise must go on with a happy with a collection of happy moments. So that's what Ed Danier is talking about here. So, as professionals, as leaders in society, we must try to build in the culture of happiness. For example, I remember a few years back, I went to an organization, and it was an organization which had many floors. So I would be reading as I moved up through the different floors on the staircase. I would be reading some quotations where they purposely put up some smiles, some statements regarding laughter, some statements regarding feeling jovial and happy, etc. So I realized that every day anybody who came through the stairs once or twice, obviously they will be looking at their staircases and the walls, and they will read these short quotations, and these quotations were clearly promoting the culture of happiness and spreading laughter, etc. And they try to connect it with a wonderful enterprise being a happy enterprise. So anybody going up the stairs of that enterprise would ultimately sort of have it within themselves that in order for me or in order for us to be a good enterprise, we have to spread happiness. It will be automatically ingrained in the culture of that organization. So we had talked about culture of organization in depth in previous presentations over the course of last year. So I don't want to go deeper into those areas, but what I'm suggesting is that a happy culture will create a better enterprise. So as a professional, we must feel that you have to be wearing a smile and you have to spread your smile. And the smile spreading through a happiness culture will ultimately build a better enterprise. Moving forward, um, the next one is by Sigmund Freud, a famous psychologist, social scientist, very, very gifted human being. So Sigmund Freud said, we are what we are because we have been what we have been. And what is needed for solving the problems of human life and motives is not moral estimates, but more knowledge. So, interesting quotation. He is suggesting that in order for you to solve things in life, you need more knowledge, because knowledge opens the doors to new possibilities. Knowledge opens new frontiers in front of you. Knowledge gives you different vision. Knowledge elevates your understanding level. Knowledge kind of shows the path or throws the light into which direction you ought to be going. If you don't have adequate knowledge, you might be checkmated. You might be stuck. You might feel that this is the end of the tunnel. You might not see the light at the end of the tunnel because you cannot weave through the path, because you don't have the adequate set of tools in order to get there. So, as a professional, as a leader in the house, what we have to do is build our particular knowledge in a particular area, because knowledge actually brings confidence. When you are a confident person as a leader, people will follow you, people will emulate you. So that perspective has to be brought in through knowledge. So the other issue behind this statement is that he says what what we are because we have been what we have been, because as a human being, we are we have always been the way we wanted to be, because we never wanted to change ourselves. So the to deconstruct this notion, we need to change ourselves, because without change we don't move forward. And we cannot change unless we bring in new ideas, unless we bring in new philosophy, unless we look at new ways of doing things. So knowledge is the ultimate guiding tool for any professional or any enterprise, for it to move from point A to point B and beyond. So, if as a professional, if you are with this mindset that I have adequate knowledge, and with this knowledge, I will be able to run my enterprise, and I don't need any further education, knowledge, perspective, vision, whatever, then you might be stuck in the jungle. You might be rotting, which you don't realize, but it will show forth after a few months or after a few years, depending on the organization. So wherever there are a lot of quick changes in an organization, and you don't pick up your knowledge areas, you don't pick up your skills, ultimately you will be stunted. Your growth will be stunted, and you will fail subsequently. So, being a professional, you have to bring this understanding of knowledge as your most important element, that should be your guiding path in order for you to move into the next sphere. So, very important an issue. Moving forward, I have a quotation on leadership, and normally it's my own quotation. And today I have my own quotation on leadership based on this topic that we have been discussing today. So, leadership is about nurturing the relationship while having a good grip on human psychology of the person and his or her community orientation. So I should have said leadership is about nurturing relationships. So I might want to change it afterwards. But the idea is that you ought to be nurturing relationship based on a good grasp, a good understanding on the set of circumstances of that person with whom you're working, and the community in which he or she has been oriented throughout his or her life. So, in other words, certain things are very sticky. So, the the views of society, the ways you think, the thought process that goes through your head comes through a long series of perception, long series of cognitive association, long series of having an interplay with you and the people around you, and then some of these perspectives on on the ground becomes your perspective that you absorb from your community, from your parents, from your extended family. So leadership is about understanding these human perspectives, the community perspective, and the orientation in which you grew up, and then applying those perspective, accommodating certain changes, directing some people with certain perspectives, changes in perspectives, and then nurture a warmth based, a joyful relationship, and then guide the person forward. For example, this is an example. It may not be 100% the truth, but let's say you are working for a very expensive organization, in the sense that your products are very expensive, but you grew up from a very middle class or lower middle class, very frugal environment. So every time you would try to make a decision based on, let's say, certain fabrics that you have to buy, at the back of your head, you will be cost conscious. Most often, that would be the philosophy that will be driving you. But in this product line that you are making, you should not be cost conscious. Rather, you should be focused on quality and quality only. Pricing issue would be much different an issue, or and it will come much later. Most important issue in the design of this product in which you're working is only quality. But somehow you will be pushed back into the thought process of ensuring a best cost strategy, or something that you don't want to really buy because the input costs are too high. Maybe there are an alternative products, and your eyes might be directed to those alternative products. So you have to understand, as a human being, why did you have this philosophy? Why did you have this vision where your organization is a product, your organization is working on a product which is fairly expensive? It is because of your cultural orientation. It is because of your family orientation in which you actually grew up. You never saw the affluence, you didn't see opulence. So you will be it will be very hard for you to actually manage those conditions. It does not mean that you will not survive, you will fail. It does not mean that, but somehow that attribute, that perspective of life that you have been accustomed to, will seep in your decision making process. So you have to be very careful. So as a leader, you have to be able to nurture people based on that person's overall orientation to life, overall knowledge base, and overall background, and then also the community orientation in which he or she grew up with. Those issues will have to be considered heavily, and then the guidance and nurturing of that person will be the guidance will be given. And that is actually what leadership is all about. So a leader has to understand the condition in which the human being has gone through, and what type of reinforcement that person ought to be getting in order for that person to move into the new set of situations where they have to quickly adapt and run their thought process and business as per the norms of the organization. So this is an important area that as a leader you have to pay attention to. So moving forward, we have been talking about humans' orientation to society. These are nothing but the ideas of psychology, the human psychology, and their play with the society and the people around. So, just to get an understanding of human psychology, we are looking at the definition of psychology. And when we talk about psychology, in this case, we are bringing in the human being in the middle of this understanding of the word psychology. So, psychology is the science of mind and behavior. And psychology includes the study of conscious and unconscious phenomena, as well as feelings and thought. As a social science, psychologists aim to understand the behavior of individuals and groups. So basically, in order for you to lead in society as a leader, you have to be having a very firm grip on who the people are, who are working with you, if you can profile them at a very detailed level, then things would be easier for you to navigate, because you will know who that person really is, what is his or her overall makeup, how does that person behave in cases of chaos, how does this person behave on a genuine regular operational day, what are the thought process that goes through this the mind of this person. If you have a very good understanding of the individual and his or her role within the framework of an organization, then for you to manage these human resources would be easier. So human psychology must be understood at an appropriate level for a leader to actually proceed with his or her team. You can't be thinking that I don't want to deal with your tantrums. I don't want to deal with your problems that you had in your family. I just want you to come and do your professional work, and that's how you're paid for. And I don't want to hear anything beyond that. That's a very fixated mindset that, as a leader, if you continue to dwell upon, it may not backfire, it may not work out, it may actually backfire on you, because you are not understanding the human elements that is affecting that human personality at work. Maybe two-person are coming to work having the same educational background, same economic background, family background, but maybe one person is coming from a family where they have regular fights, and almost every day becomes a difficult day for that person to manage. And on the other hand, the other person is coming from a environment where fights are almost non-existent. So if you look at the two paradigms here, one is a happy environment and the other is a very unhappy environment in which the person has been uh, growing up per se, and also currently in a position. So one is a happy environment, the other is a very unhappy environment. Obviously the two-person coming to work having similar background, one will do better than the other. The happy person would probably do better. His or her interaction within the group, within the organization, would be much more vibrant, whereas the unhappy person would be more reclusive. Even if he or she tries to be buoyant and spirited, uh, he will be gripped by moments of despair or frustration, thinking that a lot of failure points have taken place in his or her home, and as soon as he or she goes back, he may face similar type of problems, so he will feel this anguish within himself or herself. So these moments of situations have to be understood at an appropriate level, understanding the psychology of this person. It might be a conscious psychology, a conscious perspective, or it can be an unconscious perspective. So you as a leader, you have to be able to manage the science of mind and behavior in understanding the uh, unconscious and conscious behavioral traits of that person. So I would suggest that in certain organizations, specifically large organization, you have behavioral psychologists come in once every 6 months or something. Then they do the talk and they talk about issues. Maybe there are places where you can actually go to if you are having family problem or problems within your work, where you are not being able to manage or effectively play your role within an enterprise. Some kind of internal stress is taking place, then you could actually get hold of that organizational psychologist and get some guidance and counseling. Large organizations have these structured approaches to operations, but in a small organization, as a leader, you have to be wearing that hat of responsibility of being a mini psychologist, so to speak. So you have to have certain moments within the day where you might have to discuss certain issues which are related to a happy organizational culture, and how to develop your own personal environment and develop your own personal mindset and perception, and also may build some components of how to be a better person, even in your outside your work environment, that will have a synergistic effect on the work practices in the work environment in which that person is working. So these are mm, these are moments of truth, if you want to call it, for a leader, that that person should be wearing or rolling out within the organization, but they will have cascading impact within the enterprise. So a happy person versus an unhappy person working in an environment, being guided by a proper leadership and proper guide, will ultimately be in a position to operate at a more manageable mind frame. So you notice that if you get upset at certain things, and genuinely, if that condition continues, then it festers within you, and it kind of slows down your capacity to think. It's a kind of slows down your efficiency level, etc. But in that particular moment, if somebody came and gave you some comforting words and tried to uplift your spirit and tried to give you certain guidance and certain way of looking at these things so that your mood improves, obviously that will be a balm, that would be beneficial to you, and it will result in something better than what you were slightly you were a few minutes or few hours back. So these are important elements of human psychology that as a leader we have to be wearing in our day-to-day life, and rolling out some counseling sessions, some group discussion sessions based on certain issues and how to actually evolve as a human being at a conscious and unconscious level. And this dynamic process must be an ongoing process for a leader within an organization. So that is how you grow your leadership, based on human psychology. So they are ultimately very much intertwined, interconnected. So moving forward, as a professional, as a leader, be it as the supreme leader or a divisional leader, doesn't matter. When you are doing certain activity with a group of people and you are being given the charge of guiding that team, you are a leader to that team. From that particular construct, everybody is a leader in a particular perspective. So even if you are, let's say, head of a certain small unit, you are a leader in that small unit. So how do you run your organization is an important issue. And in order for you to run a good organization, you need to go through a self-evaluation framework that you have put up for everyone, in including yourself. So what could be some issues which you should be considering in designing the self-evaluation framework? It's like a framework to understand who you are, what is it that you're lacking, what is your behavioral traits, and how you can tame them or evolve them or guide them in a particular direction. So that's the framework we are talking about. Self evaluation will consider not just your technical skills, not just your knowledge base, but also your overall traits and behavior, your conscious and unconscious level conditioning, your thought process, your mind's internal systems and thinking, etc. Very difficult to pinpoint because these are intangible feelings. You can't really have a grip on them, but somehow you have to put a meaning to it. So first thing is, you have to be knowing your strengths and weaknesses. It's like a SWOT, standard strength, weakness, opportunity, threat framework. But I'm just only focusing on our strength and our weaknesses at this point for your internalization, internal uh, component, which are to be fixed. So your own strength and your own weakness, that you have to try to evaluate. And once you get that part evaluated, I think 50% of the game is done. Why? Because you know who you are in some of the important attribute areas. So then you need to hit on your learning potential in the self evaluation framework. What is your potential to learn? Some people learn very quickly, some people take a long time to learn, some people learn quickly and forget, others learn take longer time but it sticks to them. So you have to understand your personal learning potential, and if you do this aggregation of all the other people's learning potential, then you get a framework for your organization's overall capacity to learn new things. And as a leader, if you know the total capacity of your organization to learn new things, it will give you a certain sense of purpose, in the sense that you know this is your total capacity to learn and this is how much new material that can be injected in your enterprise, and nobody is going to be failing, not being able to understand or absorb this newfound knowledge. So you will have a fairly good grip on it. So in this evaluation framework, the total learning potential of yourself and everyone in the enterprise has to be considered. Then comes the I have the capacity, but I don't like to play the role of facilitation. I don't like to play the role of receiving mentorship. I don't like to play the role of getting some input from seniors and my colleagues. I am very independent minded. So all these behavioral attributes you have to understand of the people within your enterprise. So in this framework assessment, those issues play a pivotal role. So your set of behavioral perspectives within the enterprise, you have to do a summation of them, and you have to also try to sort of find a common link, whether these behavioral patterns are in synchronicity. Are they synchronous? That is something that you have to be paying attention to, because somebody might be having a very high spirited buoyant behavior, whereas the next person with whom he or she has to work is equally calm and not even speaking on speaking terms, good person, but tries to avoid any type of interaction with people. He or she just does the work and passes it on to someone else. So you're sitting this big person, a buoyant person who's exuberant, who wants to take the world and talk to people and be very outwardly. And then the next person is extreme introverted person, somebody who wants to be in a cocoon. Will that framework work? You have to also look at these intricate details of the behavioral makeup that makes the organization. Behavior and attitude can go together. Then the skills basket, you have to give based on the learning potential and capacity of the person. You have to allocate the skills basket amongst your people, you included. You have to pick on certain skills basket that you think that are needed, whether you have it within you yourself in the first component where you have identified your strength, or whether the skills basket is not there. However, this is necessary for this operation to take place. You have to quickly pick it up. So your leadership has to give you this complete understanding of what is it that is needed, what type of skills basket is needed for that particular job, and whether you're suited for it or not, that you have to understand. If not, the management might give you a certain time to fix it. If not, then you have to reverse your role, go into other roles, or the worst comes, the management will have to terminate you. So obviously nobody really wants to be terminated because of the skills that you have. People want people want to upgrade his or her skills. So as a leader, leader who deals with human beings from a strategic point of view, you really don't want to terminate people. You want to accommodate those people by building up their skills and giving them certain timeline to improve those skills. So these are elements of self-evaluation framework that kind of builds the enterprise. And all of these, if you really think about every single component that we had talked about, has to be done understood from a conscious and unconscious level, because some of these are body language issues which you cannot understand right away through your conscious mindset. It kind of comes to you through an unconscious behavioral channel, unconscious body language, etc. And last but not the least, adaptability. You have to adapt to all these components, and that's how you actually build your enterprise. So it has to be synchronous. Synchronicity is the magical term, and that's how you will actually create the synergy within the enterprise. So in order for you to lead as a human being, you ought to be doing the self evaluation based on the psychological profiling of the people that are working with you. So I would be giving a lot of emphasis on this evaluation framework if I were to lead certain things, or if I were to be given certain appointment as a change agent to do certain things for the enterprise. So moving forward, this is a slide that we will be discussing further in a session in much more elaborate way. But just I just wanted to throw in the idea very quickly. We talked about human personalities previously, and these are some of the personalities that are out there in the market, and you have to blend these personalities together in order for you to create your enterprise. So the first one from the top left hand corner, top one, is openness. One, some people are very open to others. They're like a open letter. You can really understand them, and they are very clear in their viewpoints, etc. So managing these people is a lot easier. Then there are people who have high consciousness level. They are they're driven by a conscious state within themselves. So the understanding everything that they go through, they have to really feel it from a conscious level. So more feeling type of person. So consciousness is important. Please also note that any individual will have a component of each one in himself or herself. One of these components might be less or more. So if a person is open, it doesn't mean that that person's conscientiousness will not be there. The feeling of what is right, etc., will not be there. And it's not that. Maybe it might be a little bit low, or it might be a fairly high amount, depends on the human personality. So all these components together actually makes a human being, but one or two of these attributes might be dominant. So openness and conscientiousness, or consciousness, it's more conscientiousness that is at play here. Being ethical, your conscience is at play, etc. Then extroversion, somebody who's out there, going out, being very dominant and dynamic in the way they place themselves out in the market. An outward type of person who is always out there talking to people, making contact, engaging in discussions. So there are people like that. Agreeableness, there are people who wants to be feeling agreeable in an environment. They don't want to change anything. They want to be part of the system so that they can manage and run their operation. It doesn't mean that they're just meek and very timid, but normally if you have too much of this attribute, then you ultimately become meek and timid. You don't exert. You don't want to question the obvious, question the current norm. You will not be changing things around. So having too much agreeableness is not good for a leader. But at the same time, a good leader will have to be having agreeableness attributes when it is needed. Um, Neuroticism, this is another area where you're hyper, you get excited, you are you make quick decisions, tempers go up. So neuroticism kind of sets the tone of how you speak, what type of body language you are playing out, etc. So these five components, later on we will go into deeper analysis in future slides, future presentations. So if you take these five attributes and if you look at the attributes on the right hand side, they are kind of reflective of each other. So again, on the right hand side, you have, on the top you have active kind of people, and on the bottom you have the reflective kind of person. So as a leader, you have to realize what type of people you are working with. On the active type of people, you have a dominant cluster and you have an influential cluster. So now if you look at the dominant cluster, what type of behavioral traits the dominant cluster people will have? They will be very direct, decisive, they will try to do things, they will try to dominate circumstances, they will be demanding output from people, etc. Similarly, on the active influential cluster, they might be inspirational, they might be interactive, they might be interested in changing things, they might be impulsive, and sometimes they might even be irritating because they're always trying to come into you and trying to suggest a new way of doing things, or trying to guide things around. So the active perspective will have the two components, the dominant culture and the influential culture. So if you are trying to connect uh, with the picture on the left, the dominant culture would be connected with more of neuroticism and extroversion, and similarly the influential culture. But influential culture will probably be adding a little bit of agreeableness, because in order for somebody to actually come in and influence another person, that person has to be agreeable in front of the other person. If I can't see that person, I don't believe in that person, so to speak, that means I'm not agreeable to that person. So in that case, the influence will not work. I will try to avoid that person, even if that person comes and tries to give me some guidance. So a level of agreeableness will have to be also blended with the influential type of person. And now on the reflective part, we have the compliant and steady. Compliant person who actually follows the rules, follows the norm, etc. That is in line with agreeableness, definitely agreeableness. And conscientiousness is perhaps also part of it. Obviously, conscientious person, you will have every good leader, whether dominant, influential, steady, or compliant, will have a component of conscientiousness within embedded within his or her personality. So it goes without saying that this attribute should be there for all. So anyways, coming to the compliant, the compliant person is more cautious because that person is trying to follow certain rules. That person will be much more careful. So a big change agent will not be a compliant person. So if you are looking for a leader who is going to come and sweep things around, then don't look for attributes where somebody has always been compliant to the norm, and a a person who has been always following the rules. You don't want that type of person to lead in that kind of environment where you want somebody to come in and make a sweeping change. So you have to be, that person has to be cautious, careful, conscientiousness, and then calculating and condescending. These are the two other attributes that you have to having, meaning being compliant, you have to be calculating and approaching certain things and perhaps agreeing to that thing. And condescending is the same thing. You condescend, meaning you comply to certain changes that are being sought, or certain not positions that are in contravention of changes that you are following, meaning your boss has told you not to worry about any further changes, and you are being compliant, you're condescending to your boss's viewpoints. So a, a transformational leader will not be a compliant leader. That goes without saying. And the other part is the steady leader. Steady leaders are also people who do not want to rock the boat. They may change things, but they want a slow process to come in. So steady will be somebody who's stable, somebody who's supportive of the current policies, who remains sincere, but that person might be a little slow and sensitive to the new changes that might be considered important, but that person may not want to incorporate these new changes right away. They want to go a little bit slower because they don't want to rock the boat. So compliant and steadiness is also important, and that is the reflective type of human personality traits that is part and parcel of certain people. And at the same time, on the top quadrant, you have the dominant and influential people who are actively trying to move things around. So if you're a leader, you have to realize this, that we call it the DISC, DICS, human personality traits. These type of traits are there amongst human beings, and you have to guide your organization or nurture your organization, understanding these forms of human psychology and human behavioral traits and philosophy, and then your organization will actually shape up to the level that you have been visioning. If you see that you need the dominant personality traits a lot more, then you will slowly evolve your enterprise by changing the hiring pattern and invite people with the dominant cluster. If you want somebody to be very compliant type of environment, then you will change uh, your employment pattern, and you will be trying to hire people who are more compliant to certain conditions and certain environments. So that's how you have to tinker with the overall management of your enterprise, because it is hard for you to change one's personality. And we know that we had talked about the idea of personality traits being very sticky. So you may change people's personality, but it will take a lot of effort and a lot of energy. And do you have the timeline? Normally, if you are in the competitive market, the timelines are very squeezed, so you have to go at it very quickly, certain changes. So if you don't have those type of personality traits who can quickly mold themselves, it's very hard. But obviously, if your employee base is less less aged, that would be allowing a possibility of change faster. Not always, but obviously it will increase the probability of changing faster with having a younger worker base in your organization. So that's very important. So I don't want to dwell on it any further. We will go into further discussions in future series on this matter. So moving to the next slide, I believe that would be my last slide. No, there is another one. Positioning as a leader, we had talked about it in detail, so I'll just quickly go through it. Most important is understanding your knowledge about your audience. Not knowing your audience will be a concoction for failure. Having a grasp of mental makeup, knowing your audience will have this component, understanding the mental makeup, who that person really is, what type of human traits that person has. You have to get a good grasp of it in order for you to be leading them and positioning yourself as a good leader. Use audience supportive language. Maybe you are a very technically competent person and you are very familiar with the technical jargons, but your audience level is much lower. So you have to come down to the tone of the audience and follow their tonality, follow their level of understanding and consciousness, and then speak to them with their level of understanding and knowledge and consciousness. So use the You have to know their cognitive capacity, and then uh, use supportive language to discuss and drive them forward. Play with mindsets and whatever it takes. Obviously, we had talked about understanding the mindset, and we know that people with different human mindsets are there and different human traits and personalities. So you have to be very good in understanding this process, basically knowing your audience very well, and then you have to tinker with the attributes in a certain way so that you ultimately optimize your benefits. So what is the optimization of benefits? It's creating more output, more product, more services for your organization that you can sell and earn more revenue. So mindset mapping is a key area and key input that you have to blend in on a regular basis. Build appropriate human relations framework. So in order for you to move forward as an operations, as a organization, the framework for success has to be built based on the human relations and integrations. So how do you do that? By deploying the previous four issues that we had talked about. But having a set of mindset people working together might be very effective. So you might have to slightly alter the makeup of your organization and who reports to whom and what type of leadership you want to place in order to what type of actions in the enterprise. Let's say you want a very knowledgeable HR person uh, who might be okay because your environment supports that knowledge base, and the employees are very much driven by knowledge and understanding of issues at a very deep level. So you want an HR person who can connect to them at that level, so a knowledgeable HR person. But for example, you might want a outdoorsy type of very extroverted HR manager in a factory where employees are having a lot of discussions and exchanges of views, and maybe confusion takes place. So you have to give a manager who would go into the factory floor and say, hey, wait a minute, this is how we have to work today because things are not working. I see a sense of frustration or whatever. That person would be very outdoorsy, so engaging with people and creating the next enterprise. So that's very important. You have to build the appropriate human relations framework. Then the next one is communicate based on audience requirement. Obviously, everything is all about communication. We talked about communication in depth previously, but as a professional, as a leader, the tool of communication is vital. So at every level, you have to be communicating with your audience so that they are always with you. They are always with you on the same page, and driving the organizational output so that the vision of the organization is actually achieved. So positioning yourself as a leader is vital for you to lead, having a very good grasp of human psychology on the ground. And moving to the next slide, uh, I end with $1 million questions. Until today's $1 million question is there a clear signal as to which type of personality traits make better leaders? Honestly, there isn't one, but depending on the enterprise for which you're hiring the leader, you have to understand the game plan of that enterprise. What type of people are there within the enterprise? What type of energy level these people have? What type of mindsets they have? What type of summation, totality of behavioral traits these people have? Based on those, you have to pick the human traits which will be dominant. So if you look at the disc we talked about, you have to apply the disc tool and then go out and find the best leader for that particular engagement. So this might be for your entire enterprise, or it might be for your division of as an organization, or it might be for your community driven organization or your political organization. You have to find the right set of people to get the right set of results. Two sets of people not matching with each other will never create the right results, even if they were uh, independently knowledgeable, independently smart people. But if they don't have a synergy between themselves, the outcome that they will produce together will be less than optimum. So you have to be very careful as to what type of leadership that you want, and based on the overall strength of your enterprise, overall mindset, and overall behavior, attitude, and the conscious and unconscious level within the enterprise. Once you have a good grasp of it, then you can find the right leader and let the that leader run the organization or the different departments within the enterprise. So I think with that we will end today's session, and back to you, Edward Probir Mondal. Thank you very much. I am Advocate Ziaur Rahman, CEO of IITM, presenting from Dhaka. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Gio Rahman, for your wonderful presentation. And today we discussed about leadership and human psychology, and many different aspects of human psychology has been revealed and discussed, and its importance and how it is related to leadership. And with that, we conclude our 47th episode of Leadership Speaker Series. And we welcome you to see our next presentation next week. As you know, every Wednesday, our Mountain Standard Time in Calgary, Edmonton, we're at 9 p.m. And in Eastern Standard Time, Toronto, Ottawa, we're having at 11 p.m. And in Bangladesh, it is at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning. And in India, it is 8:30 a.m. on Thursday morning. And we would like to acknowledge and pray for those who are suffering for um, the disaster and also the pandemic. So we ask Almighty to bless for this part of the world, those who are suffering with the cyclone and all the other disasters they're having. So um,
And also wars all around the world.
all wars around the world, especially in the Middle East. We're praying for the Middle East people, those children and those who are suffering. We are really concerned, and we like to ask help. So if you can, do whatever way you can. You should uh, help the those who are actually suppressed, the community there. So with that, we welcome you to see our channel. Our official YouTube video will be uploaded soon to our official YouTube channel, Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and Coaching. With that, thank you very much, Advocate Gio Roman, again for your presence and for your valuable inputs and sharing your experience and your delivery. Thank you very much. With that,
Welcome.
stay safe and stay blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.